her when she was 13.
KCAL 9's Peter Dowd is live in Woodland Hills now, where the woman was set to go public less than an hour ago. Peter.
Yeah, Lena and Juan, definitely some confusion here since that woman who was accusing Trump of her when she was a child decided not to appear. Instead, her attorney came out and said that the woman was too afraid to speak. Media from all over the world came out to hear what that woman had to say. Now, this was a planned news conference, but it didn't happen. A woman had filed a lawsuit alleging Trump sexually assaulted her at several different parties in 1994 when she was only 13 years old. Attorney Lisa Bloom said the woman, who has gone by the pseudonym Jane Doe, had received numerous terrible threats and gave a short statement.
Jane Doe has received numerous threats today, as have all the Trump accusers that I have represented. She is living in fear. She has decided that she is too afraid to show her face. She's been here all day, ready to do it, but unfortunately, she's in terrible fear.
That was in 2016, just days before the presidential election. Jane Doe, by the way, is the very same girl who also went by the pseudonym of Katie Johnson. My name is Suri Crowe, and you're watching the MeidasTouch Network. I recently spoke with one of Katie Johnson's former attorneys about the case that he filed on her behalf in a New York federal district court, accusing both Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein of criminal sex crimes against minor children. Why New York? Because that's the place the alleged crimes took place when Katie was only 13 years old. Here is part of my conversation with attorney Evan Goldman.
Name that was a pseudonym that we gave her. Instead of Jane Doe, we gave her the name of Katie Johnson. And it was filed in federal court in New York after there had been a previous lawsuit filed in California, not by me, but by another attorney. I don't recall his name. But that case should have never been filed in California because there was no proper jurisdiction in California. But anyway, Lisa was able to communicate with her. And after speaking to her, apparently Katie was going to reveal herself and answer questions from the press. There was a press conference set up for Lisa Bloom's office, and many individuals from the press were there, from the mainstream publications were there. Mm-hmm. It was set up for some early afternoon on a particular day. Katie woke up that morning, found that her car had been broken into and that her cell phone had been hacked. She then freaked out, told Lisa that she was not going to come to the press conference, and then shortly after that instructed us to withdraw the complaint. She was always concerned about threats from Donald Trump from the time that she was allegedly raped by him when she was 13 or 14 years old. So he, obviously that remained with her, the fact that he had made threats to her back then, saying that if he ever revealed any of this information, that, her family would be harmed, and whether physically or not, and or she would be potentially harmed also.
I've been digging into the Katie Johnson story on and off for the past couple of years, trying to get more information, trying to verify stories and the allegations that she made in both lawsuit in California as well as the one in New York. But, the story itself really never gained much traction because she dropped off the radar after that press conference she was supposed to do. And then the press got swept up with the Access Hollywood tapes and, of course, the big Stormy Daniels story. And Donald Trump got into the White House. But Katie Johnson's story is shockingly similar to the stories of how Epstein recruited young girls into his sex trafficking ring. Once again, here is her former attorney, Evan Goldman.
She told her father that she was getting on a bus to go to her grandmother's in Pittsburgh, which she never did.
Wow.
She went to New York instead. Apparently she went to various modeling agencies, and they said, we can't really do anything unless you give us a portfolio. So when she was waiting at the Port Authority for a bus to return, that's when she was approached by one of these individuals that either Epstein or Epstein hired to lure young women to parties. And the promise to her was that, hey, do you want to go to a party? There'll be very important, wealthy people there. You'll be paid to go to the party, and you'll meet some very important people that could hopefully get you on your way to stardom, so to speak.
And that is how 13-year-old Katie allegedly became prey for not only Jeffrey Epstein, but also Donald Trump, who were both named as defendants in the New York federal lawsuit, which accuses both men of rape, criminal sex acts, assault, battery, false imprisonment, and more. The lawsuit alleges that these crimes took place in the summer of 1994 at a residence in Manhattan where Epstein threw his infamous parties. The suit also alleges that both men, including Donald Trump, knew that the plaintiff, aka Katie Johnson, was only 13 years old. She says they knew that she was only 13. It goes on to say that defendant Trump initiated sexual contact with the plaintiff, that's Katie Johnson, at 4 different parties. And on the 4th and final sexual encounter with defendant Trump, that Trump tied Katie Johnson to a bed, exposed himself to the plaintiff, that's Katie Johnson, and then proceeded to forcibly rape Katie Johnson. During the course of this savage sexual attack, the plaintiff loudly pleaded with defendant Trump to stop, but with no effect. Defendant Trump responded to plaintiff's pleas by violently striking the plaintiff, that's Katie Johnson, in the face with his open hand and screaming that he would do whatever he wanted. Okay, by the way, there are additional details in the California lawsuit, but again, that lawsuit was dismissed on a filing technicality, where Katie Johnson alleges that she was begging him to use protection. He said no and threw money at her and told her to get an effing abortion if that was an issue. All right, going on in this New York federal lawsuit, it says immediately following this rape, defendant Trump threatened plaintiff, that's Katie Johnson, that were she to ever reveal any of the details of the sexual and physical abuse of her by the defendant Trump, that the plaintiff and her family would be physically harmed if not killed. And it notes exhibits A and B. And then it goes on to say both defendants, that means Jeffrey Epstein and Donald Trump, let the plaintiff, that's Katie Johnson, know that each was a very wealthy, powerful man and indicated that they had the power, ability, and means to carry out their threats. Indeed, defendant Trump stated that the plaintiff shouldn't ever say anything if she didn't want to disappear like Maria, a 12-year-old female that was forced to be involved in the 3rd incident with defendant Trump, and that the plaintiff, again, that's Katie Johnson, had not seen since that 3rd incident, and that he was capable of having her whole family killed. Now, for background context here, that Maria person who's named in the suit here is another little girl who was allegedly forced to be involved in sort of a 3-way sex act with Donald Trump and also Katie Johnson at another party. And she allegedly, according to Katie Johnson's testimony in one of these cases, or her deposition, I guess, said that she didn't perform up to Donald Trump's standards and that Katie Johnson had not seen her since. And the story was that she had been disappeared. So that's the threat that's being alleged in this lawsuit there, is that he's saying to Katie Johnson, I'll make you disappear too. So there you go. According to Johnson's attorneys, it was those threats that Donald Trump allegedly made against her as a child that stuck with Katie Johnson well into her adulthood. And right when she decided to come out publicly, and at this point, she's like in her mid to late 30s, because she wanted to prevent Donald Trump from being elected into the presidency, that's when she received these additional threats, according to her attorneys.
Jane Doe has received numerous threats today, as have all the Trump accusers that I have represented. She is living in fear. She has decided that she is too afraid to show her face.
Did it come down to, was she in fear of her life, would you say? Would that be accurate?
It's really hard to say. I think she was just at the time the threats were made, she was 13 years old in New York City as a 13-year-old. And whether she believed that those threats were going to be carried out when she was already now, let's say 35-ish or so, maybe even older. It's really hard to say whether put it this way, it freaked her out enough to instruct us to withdraw the lawsuit.
And indeed, that is what happened. The New York lawsuit was withdrawn at her request. She went into hiding and no one's really heard or seen from her since. And you can imagine that if she was afraid before, how much more terrifying it would be for her now with Trump back in the White House for a second time and with Supreme Court immunity. It has to be terrifying for her. Trump's attorney at the time of these court filings and lawsuits flatly denied Katie Johnson's allegations, calling them, quote, baseless and frivolous. Not surprising there. We know that Donald Trump always denies any type of wrongdoing. But that is what his attorneys at the time said, that there was no merit to these lawsuits. Personally, I find it hard to believe that somebody who was so terrified for her own personal safety and for that of her family's would come forward with these lawsuits. Or, basically it's the same lawsuit, just filed in two different places and eventually just the one in New York, that she would do that just to make a name for herself or to get money. I'm speaking as a woman. I find that hard to believe that she was doing this for monetary damages and to me, I'm not buying it. That is my opinion. From reading through these documents and talking to people about this case, I personally find the story credible from what I know about Epstein and from what I know about Trump. But we're never going to get the full answers because none of these lawsuits are ever going to move forward. We know that much. And at the moment, it looks like we're not going to get any type of release of the Epstein files either, thanks to the Republicans and Donald Trump. I don't know. This story has always fascinated me for a long time. And I'm curious to see what you guys think about it in the comments below. Anyway, thanks for watching. Love to know what you think. I will see you back here soon. Peace.
The truth is more important than ever. Check out our new Truth Over Lies collection at store.meidastouch.com. All 100% USA Union made.